everyone. So here at Customize Your Life, you know that we're all about bringing the experts to you so that you can create a life that is more in alignment with your values. And a big part of that is getting a hold of your money. So I'm so excited today to bring Jean Chatzky to you. She is the Today Show's financial editor. You do a tremendous amount of work with AARP. You've done work with Smart Money and Forbes in the past, and you're the host of the HerMoney podcast, which I've so enjoyed listening to.
Thank you.
And HerMoney.com, and I mean, you wear so many hats. You're a mom.
I'm a mom.
You know, which is very important to remember in the whole mix. And your new book coming out is called Women with Money, which I'm really excited about.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you for the work that you do.
That's really kind.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, you really have just a wonderful way of making money make sense.
Thank you. Well, I had to make it make sense for me before I could start to explain it to other people. I mean, I didn't come at this from having an MBA or being an economist. I was an English major in college and really made a mess of my money coming out of school and had to regroup and learn along the way, and was fortunate to be able to do it as a personal finance reporter. So I got to learn from the best.
Wow, I think that's so important for people to know, because they see you and they hear from you and they read your books, and sometimes people forget where you came from, you know, that it didn't always look pretty.
Well, and nobody teaches us this, right? As you've talked about many times, nobody digs in, with very few exceptions, and gives you a course on this at school, or teaches you how to create a budget coming out of college, or runs you through the basics of the importance of just getting started at investing in a young age. And so we need people to bring us along.
Absolutely. A mentorship is so valuable, and I have to say, before I was able to get on my journey to mentorship and really find mentors one-on-one, I learned from people like you. I learned out of books. So I like to think you mentored me before I met you, right?
Yes.
And I always tell my viewers that you know, you don't necessarily have to be connected to anyone. Certainly pursue them and look to develop relationships, but if you don't have that kind of access, you know, dive into books.
Absolutely. I've learned so much from books myself, and what you guys do is so important. I mean, mentorship has played a huge role in my life. It's responsible for my marriage in a very roundabout way, as well as my success. I had a great professor coming out of college who really gave me a lift.
You know, let's talk about money.
Okay.
Because it's something that I think people don't really like to talk about, and you know this very well. It's emotional. Why is it so emotional?
It's emotional, particularly for women, I think, because money is one of those areas where there are often no right answers. And women, like us, we like to know the answer to every question before we ask it.
That's very true.
And I like to think there are really two kinds of money questions. There are the kind that I can give you an answer to and I can be right. You know, what's the credit card with the lowest interest rate? What is the best deal that you can get on this car? I can answer those questions and I can be correct. When it comes to investing your money, we're in a different world. We're in a world where the markets are going to do what the markets are going to do, and inflation and the economy, and there are no perfect answers. We have to be satisfied with good enough, and that is really, really hard for people who like to aim for perfect. And it makes us emotional when we feel out of control, when we feel like we can't do it right, even if we check off all the boxes. And we have to get ourselves comfortable with the fact that we can succeed with the good enough.
Wow. Yeah, it brings out a lot of vulnerability.
It does.
And that's what I love about your new book. It's launching in March.
Correct,
right?
March 26th.
I'm so excited, and I feel very honored because I got to get a sneak peek at it. And what I love about it is you're digging into that vulnerability. You're digging into the stories that we've told ourselves about money, which, by the way, may not be true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We don't understand that we are products of the environment that we grew up in, and that much of what we believe to our core about money still has everything to do with what happened in our family of origin. And it wasn't necessarily what somebody taught you. It was the feeling in the room. It was there tension when the bills came in? Were there arguments in closed off rooms that you just knew were going on? That seeped into your soul and your personality, and it still influences how you are to this day. Now, once you know and understand where you came from, you can absolutely choose to behave otherwise. But you have to take a look. And you also, to make things even more complicated, if you've got a spouse or a partner, somebody else in your bed, you've got to understand where they're coming from too, because the reason that we have so much conflict about money is that your money story may not line up with my money story, and we've got to understand each other in order to work together to accomplish our goals.
Right, and that can get a little messy at first, right?
A little dicey, a little dicey.
That's one of the things my husband and I do. It's one of the very first things we do when we sit down with someone, that we're going to take them through and help them create a blueprint to be able to customize their life. It starts with talking about their financial behavior, creating a sense of self-awareness around that, and then talking about making decisions differently, making different choices that are going to get them closer to their goals. So,
well, and knowing what those goals are.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, people talk about how money ruins marriages. I think the whole process of goal setting strengthens them. I think when you dream together, that's where the romance is. That's the romance. There's no romance in paying a bill. Right? But when you start thinking, if we do this, in 5 years, we could be here, we could buy this house, we could move across the country, we could have an adventure and go spend a year traveling, we could put enough money aside that our kids are not going to have to worry about student loans. Those are the aspirations that bring us closer together.
Right, so it starts with the vision. Yeah,
absolutely.
It starts with coming on the same page or getting together on the same page, and then you're gonna have to probably make different choices, act differently, financially.
Yeah.
And install different behavior, delayed gratification, which is a term that's new to a lot of people.
It is.
But what do those types of choices look like from your perspective, and how people should approach them?
We start with the goals, we add the numbers, and then we back into how do we get there. So the process of setting goals, whether you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to save some money for something in particular, are best when they are specific and measurable, what they call SMART goals, things where you can actually benchmark your way there. So once you know what you want, and once you figured out, okay, if we are able to put aside an extra $100 a week toward this specific goal, and we invest it at X% and it grows for this many years, we're gonna make it. Then you have to back out even further and say, okay, how do we come up with $100, right? That plus, how do we make sure the $100 gets where it needs to go in order to grow?
Right.
Those are the two most important action steps, and that's where you have to look at where's our money going now. And many people have absolutely no idea, as you know, right? When you sit down with people, have you tracked your spending? No.
Yeah.
Well, you have to track it. You have to look at what choices are you making about your money today in order to say, I'm going to shake it up a little bit. I don't really appreciate the fact that I'm spending so much money on eating out or Ubers or whatever. That doesn't line up with my values. That's not where I feel good about this. I'm gonna take the bus, and I'm going to put that money into this long-term goal. But we need to know where it's going now in order to be able to influence where it's going to go tomorrow.
That's so good. I love what you said about, does it align with my values? So I think part of that first step for whether it's couples or a single person, I mean myself, when I was in my early 20s, I was a mess financially. I didn't know what I was doing. Just like you started out as well, just trying to figure it out. But so I think part of that initial process is starting with a vision, but also defining your values.
Defining your values, and sometimes people aren't sure. You know, what values are, it's a big word. What do I really value? But I found it to be very useful to use the exercise of tracking your spending to help you figure out what syncs up with your values.
Right.
So not just tracking it, but going back after you have tracked it for a week or a month and asking yourself, how do you feel about having made those decisions? How do you feel about having spent that money? Was that a good expenditure? Was that a bad expenditure? Are you regretting it? Looking at it through a backwards lens can actually help you figure out, oh, I don't feel so good about that. I think I'm gonna do it differently in the future.
Yeah, so it's reflection.
Yeah.
I love that, and it's great. It's confirmation for us because we start there as well. We look for the YOLO, the you only live once, and the FOMO, the fear of missing out, and the treat yourself is the new phrase.
Exactly.
But I love that you're saying, when you look at those expenditures, look for the feeling that it gives you afterwards. That's so on point. And I haven't heard it put quite like that before.
And it's not that we can't have the treat yourself kind of a day, right?
Yeah.
We absolutely can have it.
Sure.
But when we have it, we should make it really conscious, and we should be in that moment, and we should absorb the good feeling that it provides, because so often these days we're spending quickly and mindlessly. Where we are, when we Venmo, when we swipe, all of a sudden we stop thinking about it. The money just moves too quickly and it becomes unreal. And it's much tougher to rein it back in.
Wow. So this is great because this just gives viewers a real tangible general grasp on the first things they need to do.
Yeah.
What if they're in a position where they're just like, Jean, like, I don't even want to think about it. I'm scared, right? Like, maybe if they're in a partnership, one of the partners is really handling the finances, and they don't even really feel like they have permission or jurisdiction to really jump in there and make decisions. And that doesn't necessarily have to do with the partnership. That's back to the story they're telling themselves. Right? So what do you say to that person?
I say, take a deep breath, open a bottle of wine, sit down and say, we are gonna have a conversation about money because I am feeling like I am swimming in really deep waters because I just don't know what's going on. And that makes me feel unsafe and insecure. And quite frankly, it would be better for you if I could help, because then you'd have a partner in this, and there's a lot of work to be done. So we're gonna talk about it. For me, we're gonna talk about it for you. We're gonna talk about it more than once. But let's start and let's cover these three things. Let's just talk about how are we doing on savings, how are we doing on debt, and how are we doing on our income trajectory. So basically, what do we earn, what do we own, and what do we owe? Let's start there, and then we'll move on to goals.
That's great. That's what my early 20-year-old self needed to hear. That it was okay. That even though I had a dance degree and I literally knew nothing about money, I thought I'll just be the starving artist, things will work out. I had great parents who were supportive. I needed to hear that.
I think it's interesting to also really acknowledge that the way we live is the way we live, and we need to make room in our budget for the way we live without judgment. I went through, I have a 24-year-old son.
Okay.
He is in California, and when he got out of college, he said, let's do a budget. It's like, yay!
Yes.
Yay! But we sat down, we looked at what he was earning, we looked at his rent, his car insurance, all the things that he knew he had to pay for every month. And then we looked at the variable expenditures.
Right.
And he said, I need $200 a month for Uber. And I said, you have a car. What do you mean you need $200 a month for Uber? And he said, well, I looked at it. And when I go out with my friends, we don't drive because we drink.
Sure.
And so that's not gonna change. And it made me open my eyes and say, he's absolutely right. Like, he knows that this is an expenditure. I wouldn't want him to cut that expenditure out of his budget.
Absolutely.
So we have to make room for it. And that may mean a less expensive food budget, or a less expensive gym membership, or cutting back on something else. Once you're accomplishing your savings goals, everything else is fungible. Everything else is up to you. It's your money. This is why you work. You can change it. You can make decisions. Saving is sacrosanct.
Yeah.
And you have to absolutely do it, and you have to do it consistently. But once you get past that, it's really up to you.
Well, congratulations, Mom.
Thank you.
That's gotta feel really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the younger people get started, the better, I think.
question.
But of course, it's never too late for anyone to start today. I think it's important to remember that. But talk to us about that, because that's unique. You're a financial expert, and you're also a mom. And so you've got a great perspective, I'm sure, with how we talk to our kids about money. And you talk about it in your book.
I do, and it changes through the ages. When you get to be my age, what you're concerned about is that your kids launch. That they actually can get to the point where they're financially independent, and that's harder for this generation than it ever has been because of the massive amount of student loan debt that so many people are carrying.
Yes.
But we start early. And the most important lesson that we can teach our kids about money is that it's a limited resource, and they have to choose. And they're gonna have to make choices about what they want to use their resources for the entire life. And so when we start teaching them how to make choices, and the fact that you often can't choose again once you choose the first time, we are teaching them the most valuable money lesson. So we may think it's just a little thing when they're in the grocery store and they want a Snickers, and we say fine, and I know, terrible mom, I buy candy in the checkout aisle, but we say fine, and then they get through the checkout aisle and they take one bite and they're like, no, I want a Reese's. Well, no, you chose.
Right.
And maybe the next time we go to the grocery store, if we're in a mood to get candy again, you'll choose differently. But you can't always have a do-over. That's a really important financial lesson. We need to teach our kids how to save. That as they are growing up, it's important to learn how to save for small goals when they're little, bigger goals as they get bigger. If we can start to impart some lessons of investing, I think that's terrific. But they need to also really know the value of work. I'm a huge fan of kids working. I started babysitting when I was like 11, and worked all the way through high school and college. And I think it teaches resiliency. It teaches how to get along in the world. And there is no money like the money that you earn yourself. I remember the first time my son babysat. He's my oldest, and came home and had some money. All of a sudden, he was much more careful about how he used that money than he was with his birthday money or his allowance money, any money he was given, because he equated that money with hours of his time. He did the math in his head. He understood I had to take care of these kids for an hour in order to earn these $10, and that means I should value them more. And we don't get that lesson unless we work to earn our own money.
That is so good. Intentional parenting is so needed. And I think oftentimes people just don't know where to look, and they can look directly to you. I mean, the book, Living with Money,
Yeah.
right? There's a whole piece in that book about this.
There
and
is.
So I'm so excited for our viewers to get to read it. Can you give us just a little taste of what the book's really going to be about?
Sure. So I interviewed hundreds of women for this book, and we are at a very important turning point as far as women with money are concerned. Although we haven't closed the salary gap, we are making slow progress, but we've got women with more money, with more assets than at any other time in our history. And it's not just, yeah, it is. It's not just that we do 80% of the spending, it's that within a few decades, we're gonna have about 66% of the wealth.
Wow.
Women are gonna inherit twice, both from our husbands and from our fathers, because we're gonna outlive those husbands in many cases. And so as a result, the vast majority of this big transfer in wealth is going to come to women, and you add that to educational trends, and we just see money flowing into the hands of women. And yet when it comes to making that money work to achieve our life's goals, a lot of us don't feel confident. And so the book is about taking this opportunity and making the most of it to achieve the life that you want. It's very much in line with your mission and your values, and it is about reducing your financial stress, stepping up to invest and feeling confident in doing it. While you don't have to be a day trader, you can be a fabulous investor, and you can achieve your goals as long as you approach it intentionally. It's about leaving a legacy, creating the world that you want to create. Women really are much more concerned with using our money to shape the people that we love and shape the world that we love in a meaningful, purposeful way. So that's what the book's about.
Absolutely. And I did read it. And you just have a brilliant way of making things, like I said before, just making things make sense. You know, things that seem so colossal sometimes to us or overwhelming, especially as women. You know, maybe because of the scripts from our earlier years, it is really helpful in defining the things that I believe we need to define to be able to create the life we want to create. And one of the lines that I took for your book that I loved is you said, first and foremost, the target is creating the life you want to live, but the tool is money.
Yeah, well, that's one of our taglines on the HerMoney website. We use it in the podcast.
Great.
Life is the target, money is the tool. And it's true, right?
Yes.
I mean, we give money all of this power. We imbue it with all these emotions. If we can get rid of all that stuff, it is a tool that we should be using to accomplish the life that we want to accomplish. We have a lot of choices. Some would say we have far too many choices, and that mucks up the waters, and it can in a lot of ways. But if we can get rid of the emotional baggage, we can be a lot more successful in getting where we want to go.
That's great. So one last thing, if you could leave our viewers with one thing, one tip, just to get started today, if they haven't been taking, a good look at their money, if they've sort of been turning a blind eye and it's been something that's felt overwhelming to them, what's something they can start with today?
I'd like them to feel successful. And the best way that I know to make somebody successful is to have them start automatically saving a little bit of money every single time they get paid. People who have a 401k plan get this, because the money just flows, and all of a sudden you look at your account and you're like, "Ooh, look at me, I'm great." People who don't have a 401k need to do it for themselves. Just put some money into an IRA or a Roth IRA or a savings account, and then after you've been doing it for a month or two, visit it and see that you are actually succeeding, and it will not only give you confidence, but it will inspire you to do more.
Great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you
Thanks
for your
for
time,
having me.
your wisdom, and everything you're doing to put the resources into the world so that we can make our lives better, create and customize the life that we want to live.
Thank you so much.